Tonight, we're delving into the chilling account of a man named Marcus. He thought he'd found the perfect easy gig, a night watchman at an old university's bell tower, isolated, quiet, and seemingly harmless. But as the witching hour approached, Marcus discovered that some places aren't just old, they're awake. And what awakens in the darkness of an ancient bell tower might just be watching you back. Marcus had always been a man who preferred solitude. The bustling city was a distant memory, replaced by the quiet hum of his own thoughts. So, when the night watchman position opened at the venerable St. Jude's University, specifically at its archaic bell tower, he jumped at the chance. The tower, a Gothic behemoth of crumbling stone and rusted iron, stood apart from the main campus, looming over the sleepy town like a silent sentinel. His duties were simple: patrol the 3 accessible floors, check the structural integrity, and ensure no one tampered with the antique clock mechanism. Easy money, he'd thought. A chance to read, listen to podcasts, and escape the ceaseless noise of the world. His first few shifts were uneventful, almost pleasantly boring. The tower was cold, even in summer, and the air always carried the scent of old stone, dust, and something faintly metallic, like forgotten coins. The only sounds were the rhythmic tick-tock of the ancient clockwork above, and the occasional creak of the old timber as the building settled. Marcus would make his rounds, flashlight cutting through the oppressive darkness, then retreat to his small, drafty office on the ground floor, a thermos of coffee, his only companion. Then things began to shift. It started subtly, as these things always do. A misplaced tool in the clock mechanism room on the 3rd floor, a wrench he distinctly remembered leaving on his workbench, now resting on a dusty ledge across the room. He brushed it off as his own forgetfulness, a byproduct of the monotonous night. But the incidents accumulated. A loose floorboard on the 2nd floor landing that would always be depressed when he walked over it, yet sometimes felt perfectly solid, a faint, cold breath on his neck as he ascended the winding staircase, even when no window was open. The true unsettling nature of the tower revealed itself on a particularly still night. There was no wind, no distant sounds, just the relentless tick-tock. As Marcus patrolled the 3rd floor, he noticed a faint, almost imperceptible scratching sound coming from within the massive walls of the bell chamber itself. It wasn't the scuttling of rats or mice. It was deliberate, rhythmic, like fingernails dragging across rough stone. He pressed his ear against the cold wall, his heart beginning to thump. The scratching intensified, seeming to follow the pattern of the clock's ticks. It was as if something was echoing the bell. He spent the rest of that shift with a growing sense of unease, every shadow seeming to lengthen, every creak sounding like a stealthy footstep. He started speeding up his patrols, the desire for daylight becoming a desperate craving. The scratching continued over the next few nights, growing bolder, more pronounced. It would sometimes be accompanied by a faint, high-pitched moan, thin and mournful, echoing from the very top of the tower, right where the giant bells hung silent. Marcus had never seen the bells chime. They were disconnected years ago for safety reasons. But now it felt like something was trying to make them sing again, not with sound, but with pure, raw anguish. One night, the scratching stopped. Marcus felt a chilling relief, a momentary reprieve. But it was quickly replaced by something far worse. As he stood in his office on the ground floor, he heard a distinct, heavy thud from the first floor above him. It sounded like something large, something heavy, had been dropped. He grabbed his flashlight, his hand trembling, and slowly, cautiously, ascended the creaking stairs. The first floor was plunged into deeper darkness than usual. His flashlight beam cut through the gloom, dancing over ancient tapestries and dusty display cases holding forgotten university artifacts. He swept the beam around, his breath hitched in his throat as he noticed it. A collection of antique, dusty dolls, previously kept under glass, were now arranged in a perfect, unsettling circle in the center of the room. Their porcelain faces, cracked and yellowed with age, seemed to stare directly at him. And in the very center of their circle, a single, small, antique music box lay open, its delicate mechanism exposed. As Marcus shone his light on the music box, a faint, tinny melody, distorted and haunting, began to play from it. It was a lullaby, twisted into a dirge, filling the silent tower with an unbearable sense of melancholy. And as the music played, he noticed something else. Dust. Not just the usual old dust, but a fine, fresh layer of dust, covering the dolls, the music box, and a distinct, small, almost imperceptible set of footprints leading from the staircase, around the display cases, and back towards the stairs. The footprints were too small to be his. A cold, absolute terror washed over Marcus. He wasn't alone. He had never been alone. The silence wasn't empty. It was filled with an unseen presence. The bell tower wasn't just old. It was a mausoleum for something that refused to rest. He didn't bother to check the bells or the structural integrity. He didn't care about his job. He simply turned, his heart hammering against his ribs, and walked. He didn't run. He just walked, slowly at first, then faster, down the winding stairs, out of the heavy wooden door, and into the cool, dark night. He didn't look back at the looming silhouette of the bell tower. He just kept walking until the first light of dawn touched the horizon, and the chilling melody of that music box no longer echoed in his mind. Marcus never returned to St. Jude's. He never took another night shift. And sometimes, in the dead of night, when the world is quietest, he can still hear it, that faint, rhythmic scratching, and the ghost of a lullaby, playing on an unseen music box, under the watchful, silent gaze of the bell tower. So, what do you think happened to Marcus? Was it just an old building playing tricks on a tired mind? Or was something truly sinister lurking within the ancient walls of St. Jude's bell tower? Let me know your theories in the comments below, and always remember, some places are best left undisturbed, especially after dark. They told me the morgue night shift was boring, quiet, cold, uneventful, and for the first few weeks, that was true. The silence was so thick I could hear my own heart beating as I filed reports and monitored the temperature logs inside the old hospital basement. But there was one rule that didn't sit right with me from the start. A faded note taped to the inside of the cold storage room door that read, in all caps, "Do not open drawer 9 after midnight, ever." No explanation, no initials, just that one line, and everyone I asked either laughed it off or warned me not to mess with it. I'd glance at drawer 9 every night, 4th row from the bottom, farthest to the left, always spotless, never used, but something about it gave me a headache just looking at it too long. like it didn't belong in our world. On Halloween night, of all nights, I pulled the solo shift. No backup, no calls coming in, just me and the dead downstairs. And everything was going smooth until 12:04 a.m. when the temperature monitor let out a long beep. I checked the screen. Drawer 9 was showing 66.6 degrees Fahrenheit, while the rest held steady at 34.2. At first I thought it was a glitch, but then came the sound, a slow tapping, like fingernails or bones coming from inside the drawer. My first instinct was to run, but something pulled me in, like I was watching myself walk toward it from outside my own body. My flashlight flickered as I reached the handle, rusted, colder than the others, and without thinking, I pulled it open. The drawer rolled out with a horrible, metallic screech, but it was empty. No body bag, no ID tag, just this awful, rotten smell and a pool of thick black liquid that shouldn't have been there. I bent closer, holding my breath against the stench, and that's when I saw it, a faint reflection of my face in the puddle. But it wasn't me. The face was grinning wide with hollow eyes and no lips, just teeth, endless rows of sharp teeth like something from a nightmare. I stumbled back, slammed the drawer shut, heart racing, and locked the room behind me. But the tapping didn't stop. It got louder, faster, like dozens of fingers drumming at once. I called up to security, but the line was dead. Tried the hallway lights. Nothing. The emergency generator kicked in, but only dimly lit the corridors in a sick yellow hue. I heard something dragging down the hall, wet, heavy, like meat sliding across the tile. I backed up toward the elevator, but it wouldn't respond. Doors wouldn't open. Then, on the wall screen, every storage drawer showed an open status, except drawer 9, which now flashed occupied. My breath fogged as I turned and saw the cold room door was now open, even though I'd locked it myself. Inside, the black liquid was seeping out in long tendrils, crawling across the floor like it had a will of its own. From the puddle, something began to rise. Not quickly, but with a jerking, unnatural motion. A figure made of shadow and rotted skin, its bones exposed in places like cracked porcelain, its eyes sunken but glowing faint red. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. The thing tilted its head at me like it was studying me, then whispered in a voice that felt like it was drilling into my skull, "You looked, now you remember." And just like that, I was somewhere else, standing in a dark room full of morgue drawers, all numbered 9, each one slightly open, each one whispering, each one shaking from the inside like something was trying to get out. Then a light flicked on, and I was back in the hospital hallway, sitting upright against the wall, my clothes soaked in the black fluid, my ID missing, and the morgue door sealed shut from the inside. When the morning crew arrived, I didn't say a word. I just walked out and never returned. But every night since then, 12:04 a.m. exactly, my phone lights up with a message from an unlisted number that reads, "Drawer 9 is open. We remember you." Working the night shift at Ridgeway General was supposed to be peaceful. It was a small-town hospital, low traffic, a couple of elderly patients, maybe a broken bone or two. But that night, something felt wrong the moment I swiped my badge at 10:59 p.m. and stepped into the too-quiet hallway, lit by the flickering overhead bulbs that maintenance always forgot to fix. I did my rounds like usual, checked on Mr. Halverson in room 2B, made sure the ICU was calm, and even grabbed coffee from the break room. But when I returned to the nurse's station, I froze. On the terminal screen, under the staff login history, it showed that a second nurse had clocked in just 2 minutes after me. But I was the only one scheduled, and the badge ID didn't match anyone in our system. At first, I thought maybe someone came to cover the ER without telling me, so I paged overhead, but got no response. That's when I saw movement on the security feed. Someone in full nurse scrubs walking slowly down the east wing, clipboard in hand, head tilted oddly to one side, hair soaking wet and sticking to their face like they'd just come from a downpour. I radioed security, but they were off duty till 6 a.m., and the phones were oddly static-filled. I tried to zoom in on the feed, but the image glitched, lines of static running through the screen, and then the camera feed went black. I figured maybe it was a patient who wandered off, so I grabbed my flashlight and walked toward the east wing. But the hallway felt colder with every step, like I was descending into a freezer. The lights overhead buzzed and dimmed, and the air smelled metallic, like blood and rust. As I passed room 3D, I heard whispering. Not from inside, but above me, like someone was crawling in the ceiling vents, murmuring my name, repeating it slowly, almost lovingly. I turned, and there she was, the nurse from the feed, standing at the far end of the hallway, staring at me. Her skin was pale, too pale, like she'd been drained of blood, and her eyes were pitch black, not just the irises, but the whole sockets like gaping holes. I froze, heart pounding, every instinct telling me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Then she smiled, an awful, twisted grin that stretched far too wide, and whispered, "You're late." She lifted her hand, showing a second ID badge identical to mine, with my name and photo, but the picture was wrong. My face was distorted, eyes hollow, smile carved open like someone had drawn it with a knife. I ran, full speed back to the station, slammed the emergency lockdown code, and locked myself in the med closet, heart racing. I could hear her footsteps outside, barefoot, slow, wet. She stopped at the door and whispered, "You forgot me." I never clocked out. I don't remember what happened next. I must have passed out. But I woke up at 6:17 a.m. on the floor of the nurse's station, uniform soaked in freezing water, my badge missing. The system log now showed 2 nurses clocking out, me and someone else using my ID number. I told the admin the system was glitching, but they checked the cameras and showed me something that made my blood run cold. At 3:03 a.m., a nurse in my uniform was seen walking calmly out of the building. It wasn't me. I was inside the whole time. And now, every night since, I've been getting emails from an unlisted hospital domain. Subject line always the same. "Ready for your next shift?" But the sender? It's my name.